The afternoon sun hung lazily over Crestwood, casting long shadows across the quiet suburban streets as 12-year-old Jamal Reynolds made his way home from school. His backpack, heavy with textbooks, bounced lightly against his spine as he took his usual shortcut through Maplewood Park, a route he had walked countless times before. The park was nearly empty, just a few scattered joggers and an elderly couple sitting on a bench, feeding pigeons. Jamal barely paid them any mind, lost in thoughts of the upcoming math test and whether his dad would be home in time for dinner. His father, Sergeant Marcus Reynolds, was a Green Beret, frequently deployed on missions that kept him away for weeks, sometimes months at a time. But this week was different. Marcus was on leave, and Jamal had been looking forward to spending time with him, even if it was just helping him fix the garage door like he'd promised. Jamal was halfway across the park when the flashing lights of a police cruiser flickered in his peripheral vision. At first, he thought nothing of it. Maybe the officer was responding to a call somewhere else. But then the car slowed, keeping pace with him. A knot of unease tightened in his stomach. He kept walking, eyes forward, but the cruiser rolled to a stop beside him. The passenger side window rolled down, and a deep voice called out, "Hey kid, where you headed in such a hurry?" Jamal turned to see Officer Dan Harris, a broad-shouldered man with a buzz cut and a stern expression, watching him with narrowed eyes. Jamal had seen him around town before. Harris had a reputation for being overly aggressive, especially with kids from the Southridge neighborhood, where Jamal lived. Swallowing his nerves, Jamal forced politeness into his voice. "Just heading home, sir." Officer Harris stepped out of the car, his boots crunching on the gravel. He was taller up close, his shadow stretching over Jamal like a looming wall. "Home, huh? And where's that?" "Southridge," Jamal answered, shifting his backpack strap. "A few blocks past the park." Harris smirked, glancing around as if expecting someone to jump out from behind a tree. "You sure you're not meeting up with friends? Maybe causing a little trouble?" Jamal frowned. "No, sir. I'm just walking home." The officer crossed his arms. "Let me see some ID." Jamal blinked. "I'm 12. I don't have an ID." Harris chuckled, but there was no warmth in it. "That's convenient. So how do I know you're not out here skipping school or up to something you shouldn't be?" Jamal's pulse quickened. He knew this wasn't right. He hadn't done anything wrong. But he also knew better than to argue with a cop. His dad had drilled that into him. Stay calm. Be respectful. Don't give them a reason. "I have my school ID in my bag," Jamal offered, reaching for his backpack. Harris held up a hand. "No sudden moves, kid. Just keep your hands where I can see him." Jamal froze, his fingers inches from the zipper. The officer's tone had shifted from mocking to something harder, more dangerous. A cold trickle of fear ran down Jamal's spine. He slowly lowered his hands. Harris smirked again, as if enjoying the reaction. "You know, I stop a lot of kids around here. Most of them don't act this nervous unless they're hiding something." Jamal clenched his fists, frustration bubbling up. "I'm not hiding anything. I just want to go home." The officer leaned in, his voice dropping to a mocking whisper. "Or what? You gonna call your daddy to come save you?" Something inside Jamal snapped. He straightened, meeting Harris's gaze. "My dad's in the Special Forces. He taught me to respect the law, but I didn't do anything wrong." For a second, Harris just stared. Then he threw his head back and laughed, a loud, derisive sound that echoed across the empty park. "Special Forces? Yeah, right. Bet your dad's a janitor or something." Jamal's face burned. He wanted to shout, to defend his father, but he knew it wouldn't help. Instead, he reached for his phone. "You don't know my dad," he muttered. Harris wiped fake tears from his eyes, still grinning. "Tell you what, why don't you call him? Let's see if this Special Forces dad shows up." Jamal didn't hesitate. He dialed his father's number, his fingers trembling slightly. The phone rang twice before Marcus answered, his voice steady and calm. "Jamal? Everything okay?" Jamal swallowed hard. "Dad, I need you. I'm at Maplewood Park. A cop won't let me go home." There was a beat of silence. Then, in a tone that sent a shiver down even Harris's spine, Marcus said, "I'm on my way." The call ended. Jamal lowered the phone, his heart pounding. Harris was still smirking, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes now. "Let's see how long this takes," the officer said, leaning against his cruiser. Neither of them had to wait long. Less than 10 minutes later, a black SUV with tinted windows pulled up to the curb. The door opened, and out stepped Sergeant Marcus Reynolds, but he wasn't in uniform, just a plain black t-shirt and cargo pants. But everything about him screamed military. His posture was rigid, his movements precise. His dark eyes locked onto Officer Harris, like a predator sizing up prey. Harris's smirk vanished. Marcus didn't say a word at first. He just walked up, his presence alone making the officer take an involuntary step back. Jamal had seen his father angry before, a controlled, simmering fury that manifested in clipped words and rigid posture. But this was different. This was something deeper, something colder. Marcus Reynolds didn't raise his voice as he stepped between his son and Officer Harris, but the weight of his presence was enough to make the cop's fingers twitch near his holster. The air between them crackled with tension, thick enough that Jamal could barely breathe. Harris's smirk had dissolved into a tight-lipped grimace, his earlier bravado evaporating under Marcus's unblinking stare. "You this kid, Special Forces dad?" Harris repeated, though his voice lacked its earlier mocking edge. He shifted his weight, his hand still hovering near his belt. Marcus didn't answer immediately. Instead, he glanced at Jamal, his dark eyes scanning for any sign of distress. "You all right?" he asked, his voice low. Jamal nodded, though his throat felt dry. "Yeah, he just wouldn't let me leave." Marcus turned back to Harris, his expression hardening. "You detained my son." Harris bristled. "I didn't detain anyone. Kid looked suspicious, so I asked him some questions. Standard procedure." "Standard procedure?" Marcus repeated, his tone dangerously calm. He took a step forward, and Harris instinctively stepped back, his shoulder bumping against the cruiser. "You stop a 12-year-old walking home from school, demand ID he doesn't have, mock him when he tells you who his father is. That standard for you?" Harris's jaw tightened. "Look, I was just... Let me see your badge." Marcus cut him off, his voice leaving no room for argument. For a second, Harris looked like he might refuse. Then, with a grunt, he reached into his breast pocket and pulled out his badge. Holding it up, Marcus studied it for a long moment before nodding once. "Officer Dan Harris." His gaze flicked to the cruiser's insignia. "Crestwood PD." "Yeah," Harris muttered, tucking the badge away. "And who the hell are you?" Marcus reached into his own pocket and produced a military ID. Holding it out, Harris took it reluctantly, his eyes scanning the information. His face paled. "Sergeant First Class Marcus Reynolds, 1st Special Forces Group Airborne." The blood drained from Harris's face. His fingers tightened around the card before he handed it back, his earlier bravado crumbling. "All right, so you're military. That doesn't change the fact that your kid was... My son was walking home." Marcus interrupted, his voice still quiet, but carrying an edge that made Harris stiffen. "You had no probable cause to stop him, no reason to question him, and you sure as hell had no right to laugh in his face when he told you who I was." Harris's mouth opened, then closed. He glanced at Jamal, then back at Marcus, his Adam's apple bobbing as he swallowed. "I was just doing my job." Marcus's lip curled. "Is that what you call it?" The silence that followed was suffocating. Jamal watched, his heart hammering, as his father and the cop stood locked in a silent battle of wills. Harris was the first to break, his shoulders slumping slightly. "All right, look," he muttered, rubbing the back of his neck. "Maybe I was a little overzealous." Marcus didn't move. "Apologize to my son." Harris blinked. "What?" "You heard me." Marcus's voice was steel. "You embarrassed him, humiliated him for no reason. Now you're going to look him in the eye and apologize." Harris's face twisted, caught between indignation and the dawning realization that he was in way over his head. He glanced at Jamal, his mouth working silently for a moment before he exhaled sharply. "Fine." He turned to Jamal, his jaw tight. "Kid Jamal, right? I'm sorry. I shouldn't have laughed at you." The apology was grudging, but Jamal felt a small flicker of satisfaction anyway. He nodded once, not trusting himself to speak. Marcus studied Harris for another long moment before stepping back. "We're done here." He placed a hand on Jamal's shoulder, guiding him toward the SUV. Harris watched them go, his expression unreadable. But as Marcus opened the passenger door for Jamal, the cop called out, "You think this is over? You can't just—" Marcus turned his head slightly, cutting him off with a look. "It's over when I say it's over." Harris shut his mouth. The SUV door closed with a solid thunk, sealing Jamal inside. He let out a shaky breath as his father circled the vehicle and slid into the driver's seat. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Marcus turned the key in the ignition, the engine roaring to life. "You okay?" he asked again, his voice softer now. Jamal nodded. "Yeah, just pissed." Marcus's mouth quirked in a faint smile. "Good. Means you've got a spine." He put the car in drive, pulling away from the curb. In the rearview mirror, Jamal could see Harris still standing there, watching them go by. The moment Jake Reynolds stepped out of Diane Harris's office, the atmosphere in the Tesla factory shifted palpably. A charged silence hung in the air, punctuated only by the distant whir of machinery and the occasional hushed whisper as employees pretended to focus on their work while stealing glances at him. Every step Jake took toward Elon Musk's office felt like walking through a surreal dream, his pulse pounding so loudly in his ears that it nearly drowned out the rhythmic clanking of robotic arms assembling car frames in the distance. The Slack channel, which had been a frenzy of memes and nervous jokes just minutes earlier, had gone eerily quiet, as if the entire company was collectively holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Even the usually bustling cafeteria was subdued, with clusters of engineers and production line workers murmuring over coffee, their conversations laced with speculation. Do you think he'll get fired on the spot? What if Elon laughs it off? What if this ends up on Twitter by noon? Each theory more dramatic than the last. As Jake neared the glass-walled office, he could see Elon inside, now fully awake, leaning back in his chair with his phone in one hand and a half-finished cup of cold coffee in the other. The photo was clearly visible on Elon's screen, and for a heart-stopping second, Jake considered turning around and bolting. But before he could retreat, Elon looked up, his sharp blue-gray eyes locking onto Jake's through the glass. There was no anger in his expression, no visible irritation, just an unreadable calm that somehow made the situation even more terrifying. The door was slightly ajar, and Elon motioned for him to enter with a casual flick of his wrist, as if this were just another routine meeting. The office was exactly as Jake had imagined, cluttered with prototypes of Tesla's latest hardware, whiteboards covered in equations and schematics, and a disorganized pile of Mars colonization notes stacked haphazardly in one corner. Elon didn't speak at first, instead swiveling his chair slightly to face Jake fully before setting his phone down on the desk, the infamous photo still glowing on the screen. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating, until Elon finally broke it with a single, unexpected question. "How long was I out?" Jake blinked, momentarily thrown. Maybe 20 minutes, he managed, his voice coming out hoarse. Elon nodded, rubbing his temples. "Huh, felt longer." Then, to Jake's utter disbelief, the corner of his mouth twitched almost like he was fighting a smile. "You know, I've been telling people for years that sleep is optional. Guess this proves otherwise." Jake didn't know whether to laugh, apologize, or brace for the inevitable but. Elon leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk. "Here's the thing, Jake. That photo. It's already everywhere. Internal servers, private chats, hell. I've gotten 3 texts from SpaceX guys asking if I'm okay." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "And now I've got PR breathing down my neck, worried this'll leak to Bloomberg by lunchtime." Jake's stomach dropped. "Sir, I didn't mean for it to blow up like this. It was just a dumb joke for the team, I know." Elon interrupted, waving him off. "But here's the problem. If I fire you, it looks like I can't take a joke. If I ignore it, it looks like I'm weak. And if I laugh about it, the board starts questioning whether I'm taking Tesla seriously enough." He paused, studying Jake. "So here's what we're going to do." Jake braced himself. "You're going to help me turn this into a win." Before Jake could process that, Elon grabbed his laptop, spun it around, and pulled up a mock-up of a Tesla-branded energy pod, a sleek, futuristic nap capsule with the tagline, "Recharge like the boss." "We've been sitting on this design for months," Elon said, grinning now. "And thanks to you, we've got the perfect viral moment to launch it." Jake could only stare, his mind racing. Was Elon Musk pivoting on a humiliation, turning a joke at his expense into a marketing opportunity? Then Elon's expression shifted, just slightly. "Oh, and Jake, next time you catch me sleeping, maybe just nudge me instead of snapping a pic." The tension shattered. Jake exhaled, a disbelieving laugh escaping him. "Noted, sir." As he left the office, the factory's usual noise rushed back in, but now it was laced with something new. Curiosity, relief, and beneath it all, the unspoken realization that maybe, just maybe, the man at the top wasn't as untouchable as they'd all thought. The moment Jake stepped out of Elon's office, the factory floor, which had been buzzing with nervous energy, erupted into a cacophony of whispers, stifled laughter, and outright cheers. The tension that had gripped the building for the past hour dissolved like smoke as word spread that Jake hadn't been fired, that Elon had laughed it off, and that, impossibly, the whole thing was being spun into some kind of corporate rebrand. Employees who had been nervously refreshing Slack now crowded around Jake, clapping him on the back, demanding details. What did he say? Is he pissed? Did he really just turn this into a nap pod ad? Their voices overlapping in disbelief. Across the room, Diane Harris stood with her arms crossed, watching the scene with a mix of exasperation and relief. She had spent the last 40 minutes fielding panic calls from PR, legal, and even a board member who had somehow already heard about the incident. Now, as she watched Elon stride out of his office, his usual restless energy restored, she realized the crisis had been averted or, more accurately, hijacked and repurposed into something else entirely. Elon didn't address the crowd. He didn't need to. Instead, he walked straight to the nearest whiteboard, grabbed a marker, and began sketching what looked like a modified version of the energy pod he'd shown Jake, scribbling notes about materials, dimensions, and inexplicably a built-in espresso machine. The employees closest to him exchanged glances. This was classic Elon. A crisis became a tangent became a project, and suddenly, the entire company's priorities realigned around whatever had captured his attention. Within minutes, a team of engineers had been summoned to discuss feasibility, while the marketing department scrambled to draft a press release about Tesla's new commitment to employee wellness. Meanwhile, outside the factory walls, the internet was already doing what it did best. Though the photo hadn't officially leaked, blurry screenshots had begun circulating on Reddit and Twitter, accompanied by wild speculation. Is this real? Did Musk finally collapse from overwork? Fake, probably a deep fake. Memes sprouted like weeds. Elon photoshopped into history's most famous napping scenes, the Titanic door, the Lion King's Pride Rock. Elon as a sleeping cyborg mid-recharge. Elon curled up in a Doge meme with the caption, "Much sleep. Very tired." The hashtag #NapElon began trending in San Francisco, then nationwide. By midday, even mainstream outlets like CNBC and The Verge had picked up the rumor mill, running speculative pieces with titles like, "Is Elon Musk's work ethic sustainable?" And Tesla employees report brutal hours. Is the CEO feeling the strain? Back at the factory, Jake's phone was blowing up with notifications, texts from friends, LinkedIn connection requests, even a DM from a Wall Street Journal reporter asking for comment. He ignored them all, still processing the whiplash of the last few hours. 1 minute, he'd been sure he was about to be escorted out of the building by security. The next, he was being hailed as the guy who'd punked Elon Musk and lived. It was surreal, but beneath the relief, a nagging thought lingered. What happens when the hype dies down? Elon might have turned this into a win today, but the man was famously mercurial. Would he still be laughing about it tomorrow? As if on cue, Elon's voice cut through the noise. "Jake, get over here." He was standing near the prototype bay, surrounded by engineers, holding up a 3D printed model of the pod. "We need a name for this thing, and since you're the reason we're building it, you get first dibs." The room fell silent, all eyes on Jake. He hesitated, then grinned. How about the Musk ZZZ? Elon's bark of laughter was answer enough. The internet had officially lost its collective mind over Nap Elon. What began as an internal joke at Tesla's Fremont factory had metastasized into a full-blown cultural phenomenon, spreading across social media platforms with the relentless energy of a viral wildfire. By noon Pacific time, the blurred Slack screenshot of Elon Musk asleep at his desk had been repurposed into every conceivable meme format, side-by-side comparisons with historical figures known for their work ethic: Thomas Edison, Nikola Tesla, and even a drowsy-looking Albert Einstein, spliced into movie scenes where characters famously dozed off. The Godfather's Michael Corleone nodding off during a meeting, Frodo sleeping in Rivendell, and even reimagined as Renaissance paintings with dramatic chiaroscuro lighting and captions in faux Latin. The sheer absurdity of it all had turned Elon, for perhaps the first time in his public life, into something approaching relatable. The man who colonized Twitter, launched cars into space, and threatened to put chips in human brains was now, for a brief and glorious moment, just another exhausted guy who had fallen asleep at work. But while the internet reveled in the joke, the reaction inside Tesla's corporate offices was far more complicated. The PR team, led by a perpetually stressed woman named Lydia Cho, had spent the morning in damage control mode, fielding calls from journalists, investors, and even a few concerned shareholders who wanted to know if Elon's impromptu nap was a sign of deeper issues at the company. Lydia had prepared 3 separate press statements, one dismissive. Elon Musk frequently works overnight at Tesla facilities. This was a momentary break between meetings. One humorous. Even visionaries need to recharge. Stay tuned for exciting new wellness initiatives. And one defensive. This is a private matter. Tesla's focus remains on innovation. She had expected Elon to choose the first option. Instead, to her horror, he had taken matters into his own hands and tweeted a single, cryptic message: "The revolution will be well rested. #MustEZ." The tweet, naturally, exploded. Within minutes, #MustEZ was trending globally, and Tesla's social media team, usually scrambling to keep up with Elon's unpredictable online presence, seized the opportunity. They posted a teaser image of the sleek, pod-like nap station Elon had sketched earlier, along with a cheeky poll. What should we name it? 1. The Recharge Pod. 2. The Tesla Snooze. 3. The Elon Dreamliner. The response was overwhelming, with thousands of votes pouring in within the first hour. Meanwhile, in the Fremont factory, engineers who had been pulled from their usual projects to work on the pod prototype exchanged bemused glances. Just yesterday, they had been optimizing battery efficiency. Now, they were debating whether the nap pod should include white noise features or built-in meditation guides. Jake, meanwhile, was still reeling from his sudden, accidental fame. His LinkedIn inbox was flooded with messages, recruiters offering him jobs at rival tech companies. "Your boldness is exactly what we need." Podcast hosts inviting him to discuss workplace humor in the age of viral media, and even a few randoms asking if he could get them a discount on a Model S. His co-workers treated him like a minor celebrity, half-jokingly asking for selfies or begging him to please take a photo of me next so I can go viral too. But beneath the surface, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that this was all temporary. Elon's mood could shift in an instant. The internet's attention span was famously short. And what happened when the next big meme came along? Then there was the other, more unsettling development: the think pieces. By mid-afternoon, op-eds began popping up across tech and business sites, dissecting what #NapElon really meant. Is Elon Musk's sleep deprivation a warning sign for Tesla? Asked Business Insider. The dark side of hustle culture. Even billionaires can't outrun burnout, declared Wired. Some articles framed the nap as an endearing moment of humanity. Others used it as a jumping-off point to critique Tesla's notorious overtime demands. A particularly scathing piece in The Atlantic asked, "If the CEO is this exhausted, what does that say about the workers on the factory floor?" Elon, for his part, seemed to be enjoying the chaos. He held an impromptu all-hands meeting in the factory cafeteria, where he joked about the memes, showed off early nap pod schematics, and in a move that surprised everyone announced a new company-wide policy: mandatory recharge breaks for employees working more than 12-hour shifts. The room erupted in applause, though a few skeptical whispers lingered. Was this just PR? Would this actually change anything? As the workday wound down, Jake found himself staring at his phone, scrolling through the endless stream of #NapElon content. He had started the day as a nobody. Now he was something else. A catalyst. A cautionary tale? A footnote in Tesla lore? He wasn't sure. All he knew was that tomorrow, the internet would move on. But for Tesla, and for him, nothing would ever be quite the same. The laughter and viral memes had barely faded when the real storm hit Wall Street. By 8 a.m. the next morning, Tesla's stock price had dropped 4.7% in pre-market trading, a plunge that sent shockwaves through investor circles and triggered a cascade of panicked emails between Tesla's executive team and its largest shareholders. The financial analyst reports were brutal. Musk's Napgate raises governance concerns, declared Morgan Stanley. Is Tesla CEO distracted by side projects including sleep pods? Asked Goldman Sachs. The underlying message was clear what the internet found hilarious. The markets interpreted as instability. And nothing made billionaires more nervous than unpredictability. Inside Tesla's Palo Alto headquarters, the board of directors had convened an emergency meeting. The mood in the glass-walled conference room was tense, the air thick with the scent of overpriced coffee and unspoken frustration. Seated at the head of the table, Robin Denholm, Tesla's chairwoman, scrolled through the morning's headlines with a deepening frown. "Elon, we need to address this," she said, her voice calm but firm. "The narrative is spiraling. First the Nap photo, then the tweet, now this." She turned her tablet around to show the latest Bloomberg piece. Tesla's Nap Pod initiative sparks investor fears over misplaced priorities. Elon, slouched in his chair with his arms crossed, looked more annoyed than concerned. "It's a fucking meme, Robin. The stock will bounce back." "It's not just a meme," interjected Antonio Gracias, one of Tesla's longest-serving board members. "It's the perception. We're in the middle of ramping up Cybertruck production, battling delays in Berlin, and now the headlines are about napping? The optics are terrible." Across the table, Ira Ehrenpreis, another director, leaned forward. "Elon, we're not saying you shouldn't take breaks. But the way this played out unplanned, uncontrolled, it makes Tesla look unserious. And with the SEC still monitoring your every tweet." "Oh, come on," Elon snapped. "Since when does taking a nap make me unserious? You know how many nights I've spent on the factory floor this quarter." The debate raged for nearly an hour, some directors arguing for a formal statement to reassure investors, others pushing Elon to temporarily step back from social media. A few even suggesting he publicly shelve the Nap Pod idea to refocus attention on Tesla's core business. Through it all, Elon remained defiant. "You're missing the point," he said finally. "This isn't a distraction. It's an opportunity. We're getting more free press than we would from a Super Bowl ad. And the pod, it's not just some gimmick. If we can patent this, it's a new revenue stream, corporate wellness contracts, maybe even consumer sales. You think Google and Amazon won't want these for their campuses?" Silence fell over the room. The board members exchanged glances. It was classic Elon turning a potential liability into a moonshot. But would it work? Meanwhile, downstairs in the PR bullpen, Lydia Cho was fighting her own battles. Reporters from the Wall Street Journal and CNBC were demanding comments. A particularly aggressive hedge fund manager had just gone on Squawk Box to declare that Tesla needed adult supervision. And worst of all, an anonymous post on Blind, the notoriously leaky workplace app, claimed that Tesla's factory workers were being pressured to skip breaks to meet quotas, directly contradicting Elon's recharge rhetoric. Lydia buried her face in her hands. How had one stupid photo started all this? Back in the factory, Jake Reynolds was doing his best to stay under the radar. The initial euphoria of his notoriety had faded, replaced by a gnawing paranoia. Every sideways glance from a manager felt like a threat. Every laugh in the break room sounded like it might be at his expense. When Diane Harris summoned him to her office again, his stomach dropped. But instead of firing him, she handed him a non-disclosure agreement. "Sign this," she said. "Its standard covers anything you might have seen or heard related to recent events." Jake scanned the document. It was dense with legalese, but one clause jumped out. Employee agrees not to discuss, depict, or otherwise share any internal communications or observations regarding Elon Musk's activities or habits without express written consent. He looked up. Is this because of the photo? Diane's expression was unreadable. It's because the world doesn't need a sequel. As Jake signed, he couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just crossed an invisible line from being the guy who captured a moment to the guy who'd been silenced by it. Outside, the sun was setting over Silicon Valley. Somewhere, a Bloomberg terminal flashed with the latest update. Tesla recovers slightly after Musk hints at major product roadmap update next week. The cycle was already turning, but in quiet corners of the internet, new threads were popping up. Did Tesla just gaslight us about burnout culture? Why did that employee sign an NDA? What aren't they telling us? The nap was over. The real wake-up call was just beginning.